We start this morning in Kentucky, where Republican Congressman Thomas Massie is now just the latest incumbent defeated in a primary by a Trump-endorsed challenger.
I have called and conceded the race. This thing went on longer than Vietnam. It started 9 months ago, and they didn't even have a candidate, and they decided they want to take me out.
CBS News projects former Navy SEAL Ed Gallrein won what is now the most expensive House primary in U.S. history. True to form, President Trump did not pull any punches when he spoke about Massie last night.
We won the Massie thing. He was a bad guy. He deserves to lose.
And primary elections were also held yesterday in the battleground state of Georgia. CBS News projects former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms secured the Democratic nomination to become the state's next governor. She will take on either Georgia Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones or billionaire healthcare executive Rick Jackson. Neither Republican cleared 50% of the vote, so they will advance to a runoff. Notably, Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, another political opponent of President Trump, was eliminated from the race, as you see in the results. Georgia Republicans will also have to wait a bit longer to pick their next Senate nominee. Congressman Mike Collins and former college football coach Derek Dooley are facing off again next month. They are looking to unseat incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff, who ran unopposed in yesterday's primary. And out in Pennsylvania, voters picked their Democratic nominees in 4 districts, where the parties believed to have a high chance of gaining House seats. They will compete against 4 Republican congressmen who currently hold those seats. CBS News political director Fin Gómez got a little bit of sleep and is joining us now from our DC bureau with a bit more on yesterday's races. Good morning, Fin. I'm curious about Massie's loss last night. Was that entirely unexpected, considering what we've seen happen to Trump opponents up until now?
Look, good morning, Errol. But look, this was the result the influential Trump political operation was expecting. I spoke to some of them last night, and frankly, this is the result they engineered. The president personally recruited Ed Gallrein, a former Navy SEAL, to take Massie out. He dispatched Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to make a rare campaign appearance on the ground in Massie's district for Gallrein. And remember, there were tens of millions of dollars that poured in from Trump-allied groups to defeat Massie. And as you said, this became the most expensive House primary in American history. Massie himself told CBS News on Monday that in a normal year, he wins the seat with 80% of the vote. So yes, it was expected. But listen listen to how Massie framed his loss in his concession speech last night.
If the legislative branch always votes with the president, we do have a king. If the legislative branch always votes whichever way the wind is blowing, then we have mob rule. But if the legislative branch and the representatives and the senators that serve with it always follow the Constitution, we have a republic.
And the other big takeaway from a key battleground state is, of course, Georgia. You saw Trump-backed candidates in that Senate primary win, but also in the governor's race. Brad Raffensperger finished a distant third in a Republican gubernatorial primary, knocked him out of the runoff entirely. He won't be on that June 16 ballot against Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, 5 years after refusing the president's call to find 11,780 votes. Georgia Republicans have showed him the door. So between Massie, Raffensperger, Bill Cassidy losing in Louisiana on Saturday, the message from this president to Republicans across him is unmistakable. Errol.
Yeah, and Finn, we're also following the Texas Senate race. Yesterday, the president officially endorsed Ken Paxton. Break down the reaction to that, because while people in the party may want these nominees, they will be running in a general election with a general population. So how do these calculations shake out eventually?
That's why I love coming on your show, Errol, because you know your politics. So look, the reaction inside the Senate Republican Conference has left some asking questions about the endorsement from President Trump. Look, Senator Susan Collins, who's facing her own tough re-election bid in Maine, called the president's endorsement surprising, and Paxton ethically challenged. Also, Senator Lisa Murkowski, a frequent Republican critic of the president, said she was supremely disappointed in the endorsement and openly questioned whether Republicans can even hold Texas now. Majority Leader John Thune, who had been quietly lobbying the president for months to back Cornyn, was somewhat stone-faced walking into that policy lunch yesterday on the Hill, telling reporters only it's his decision, meaning the president. Remember, though, Paxton was impeached by the Texas House back in 2023 and has faced scandals and investigations, but he is still popular with Texas Republicans. Cornyn's response to the endorsement was essentially, I voted with this president 99% of the time. He has, and now Texans have to decide. The runoff is less than a week away, Errol, May 26th. Paxton supporters tell me, look, he has won statewide races before as Attorney General, and this is, after all, Texas. Remember, Democrats haven't won a statewide race in the Lone Star State since the 1990s. But Democrats I spoke to now sense an opening for James Tallarico. A recent University of Texas poll shows a dead heat between him and Paxton. I caught up with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who was practically giddy yesterday when I asked him about the Texas race. Here's what he had to say.
Republicans in Texas are in shambles, and we're going to win Texas.
You know, the Texas race is becoming another test of how much influence the president has in these Republican primaries heading to the midterms. Last night shows that it's still very much his party. He has a tight grip and serious sway with his base. Errol.
Well, it's always great to have you on, Finn. As you know, our viewers are busy. They're getting their day going, so we get straight to the point. Fin Gómez in Washington. Thank you, Finn. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, Democrats have chosen their swing district candidates ahead of the midterms, but it was a tame primary race for the candidates at the top of the ticket. Governor Josh Shapiro went unchallenged in the Democratic primary. He's poised to take on Republican State Treasurer Stacey Garrity, who also ran unopposed. However, Shapiro made it clear he's more concerned with the down-ballot races. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small joins us now live this morning from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Taurean, good morning. How did candidates there, backed by Governor Shapiro, perform last night?
Yeah, good morning, Errol. They did exceedingly well. Every candidate in those 4 districts that you mentioned at the top of the show, so the 1st, 7th, 8th, and 10th, ended up securing their nomination, or presumably being projected to secure their nominations in their respective races. Let's zoom into a couple of those. Let's start with Congressional District 7. That's Allentown, where I am today. Bob Brooks, the retired firefighter and union leader who received the backing pretty early on from Governor Shapiro, had spent the last couple of weeks building this broad coalition of support. He had people like Senator Bernie Sanders, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the DCCC backing him in his crowded primary, ultimately securing the victory there to now take on Ryan McKenzie, the first-term Republican incumbent in November. I want to shift to the 1st Congressional District, where we saw Bob Harvey, a Bucks County commissioner, who was also on stage at the rally that Governor Shapiro hosted last night, talk about his now matchup with his Republican incumbent opponent, who he's set to face on, Brian Fitzpatrick, in November. What makes that race so interesting, so curious, Bucks County is one of those really swingy districts. We caught up with Sheriff Danny Ciesler, who won race for the county sheriff last year and won over a MAGA sheriff, even though the president won that same year, or won a year before, in that district. So these will be the races to watch. And as Major Garrett and Anthony Salvanto made this case yesterday, this is a state that hasn't been touched by the redistricting arms race. So it's curious to see there are 4 races potentially up for grabs for Democrats to take come November.
And Taurean, you spoke with Governor Shapiro just outside of a polling location. What did he tell you?
Yeah, as he frames November as this referendum on Trump, I tried to get the question to him about whether or not he's concerned about Trump's staying power. Take a listen to what he had to say. Trump-backed candidates have won in these primaries. Senator Bill Cassidy lost his primary. What's your response to that, considering there's evidence of Trump's staying power in his party?
Well, let's see what November entails. I think what's clear is that Donald Trump keeps injecting chaos and cruelty and corruption into our Commonwealth and into our country. People are sick and tired of it. I think you're going to have a national referendum this
What I also
November
found curious
on Donald Trump.
about this. What I also found curious about the governor's speech last night was that he spent the majority of his time going after the president. He said straight up that he feels that this is a fight against the president, his policies. He had a little bit of alliteration saying chaos, cruelty, and corruption that he believes is plaguing the Commonwealth. I found it instructive considering he's one of those 2028 potential presidential hopefuls, Errol.
Potentially a national message he's developing. Taurean Small, live for us in Pennsylvania this morning. Taurean, thanks. Tuesday's primaries are really just a snapshot of what we could see in November's midterm elections. For more on what could swing control of Congress, here's CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto.
Certainly the most watched contest of the night, Kentucky's 4th congressional district, where President Trump's endorsed candidate Ed Gallrein defeated incumbent Representative Thomas Massie. This one widely seen as showing once again the power of the president's endorsement in Republican primaries. I point out, I'll show you this slide here from our latest national polling, where we had asked Republicans what they want in a candidate. This is nationally, but it sets the context. Big numbers, especially among MAGA Republicans, want a candidate that supports at least most, if not everything, President Trump wants. So that's up some of what you saw there. I'm going to go back to the map, and next I'm going to take you down to Georgia. Big Senate race coming up in Georgia. Incumbent Democrat Jon Ossoff, who will he face? You see Collins and Dooley, they'll head to a runoff, fight that out for another couple of weeks because nobody got 50%. And then that'll set up the Senate battleground, because I'll go back to the slideshow and I will show you that of the list of states that could be Senate battlegrounds coming in November, Georgia is one of them that the Democrats would have to hold if they have any hopes of taking back Senate majority. And then finally, back to the map, and I'm going to take you up to Pennsylvania. Here, Democrats picked a number of candidates who will compete in a string of very competitive House districts here in the eastern part of the state. Why is every single House seat important? Well, you've seen a lot of moves around redistricting, but the other thing I'm going to show you in that context is, if I show you our current House estimate, there just aren't that many districts that we rate right now as toss-ups, so every one of them is going to count for both Democrats and Republicans. That's a little look ahead to the midterms based off what we saw tonight.
All right, thanks for that, Anthony.